So now we're broadcasting, and we're going to give everybody a few minutes to come into the room. And then in about 2 minutes, I'll go ahead and introduce you. So we'll just be patient and see what happens.
That sounds good.
Mm-hmm. This is not a commercial, but I am addicted to Perrier this summer. I don't know why. I used to not like it, but now I have to have
Well, and it's fancy. Makes me feel fancy when I drink it anyway.
It does. It makes you feel like you really have something. It's just water, but you feel like, this is substantial.
It's a little extra.
Yeah.
A little something extra.
Right. So
I'm actually going to get my water really quick, so I'll be right back.
That's a great idea. Welcome, everybody. We're just waiting, giving it a few more minutes till we get started. Very exciting topic today.
I'm good. I got it.
Good. So how is the weather there in North Carolina?
It is rainy and a little dark.
Oh.
So hopefully it'll be clearing up in the next couple days. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Right. Well, that's good because my daughter lives in Durham, and she was saying it was very, very hot.
It has been hot and humid. That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we want to, all right. So I'm just kind of looking to see, we've got some folks with us joining us. That's great. And I think I'm just going to give it just about, 30 seconds more, and then we'll just get started.
Sounds
and
good.
Some people join us as we go, so that'll be perfect. And again, everybody, we're going to be recording this, and we'll be posting it with our other webinars on soarnc.org/webinars, and I will type that in the chat box as we go along. So, and that won't bother you, Holly. I think I can do that on the side, behind the curtain.
I am flexible.
All righty.
Fine with me.
Well, yeah, so let's go ahead and get started then. And I am going to hide me after I introduce you. So let me go ahead. It is my pleasure to introduce Holly Blanc Moses. She is a great friend of SOAR's, and actually she and John just did a podcast together that you can find on Holly's website, which I will also type into the chat bar as we get going. So this is a real treat for us to have her join us. Holly is a board certified behavior analyst and a licensed clinical mental health counselor and a licensed psychological associate with over 20 years experience in ADHD, autism, and anxiety. And she's also the mother of 2 differently wired boys. Oh, bless you, boys.
They keep me on my toes.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
And so Holly comes to us not only as a professional, but as a mom. And I am looking forward to hearing her stories and understanding more about this notion of the whys of challenging behavior. So Holly, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I will be right here if you need anything.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you, Liz. I appreciate it.
You bet.
So welcome, everyone. I'm so excited that you joined me, and I'm thankful for this opportunity. Challenging behavior, which probably sounds strange, is one of my most favorite things in the world to talk about. So I'm excited for this opportunity. We are going to dig in about what is the reason this stuff happens and what can we do to help our children, our students, and our clients. So I'm going to be talking about both, about school, about home, and community a little bit. So we're going to look at all of those things today. So I want to tell you I know everybody is incredibly busy, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to join me today. You being here is telling me that you want so much to help your child or your student be the best that they can. You care about them and you want to set them up for success. And you know behavior, and challenging behavior in particular, can really get in their way. So I just want to let you know that you are in the right place. And thank you for taking the time. So I want to tell you why I am so excited about challenging behavior and why I love it so much is that I've always been really excited about learning, why do people do what they do? It's so interesting. Humans just behave in different, most interesting ways. And when we look at it as an interest, it can really help open up the possibilities of how to help. So this is me. Yes, I was such a nerd, even in kindergarten. I was fascinated by my peers and why, Leslie was more and, liked that by my fourth grade teacher than me. And, all these different reasons why people behave the way they did. And I was just always interested, always people watching. And so then I just decided, hey, I got to do this. I want to do this forever. I want to find out about behavior and how to help. And so I just kept going after that. And this is a picture of me when graduating graduate school. And it helps me remember too, I've been doing this for a very long time, over 20 years now. But you can imagine I looked probably pretty young then. And I was there consulting at a middle school and wanting to be able to teach their teachers. So I'm teaching all the teachers how to help these children succeed. And I got in trouble and sent to the office for not having a hall pass while I was there to teach the teachers. They sent me to the office. It was amazing. But anyway, I just kept going. And again, you can find lots of information from me and how to help set up your child, your client, or your student for success. Now, Liz had mentioned this earlier. These are my guys. When I was just a professional, not just, because that's important too, I thought, I got this thing. I know all about it. I know everything to do when it comes to challenging behavior. And then I became a parent, which is completely different. It is not at all the same. And so I got to have that first-hand experience. And did I have a first-hand experience? So we actually adopted both of our boys from foster care. And our oldest, he's autistic and has severe ADHD, and he is 15. And our youngest son, who has ADHD and some other stuff happening and significant learning differences. And how cool is that? Cat shirt, Minecraft pants. He's rocking it. He still rocks this outfit to this day. So again, coming to the table as both a professional and a parent, I feel like I can serve you and better support you, help other children, because I understand how it is to come from both perspectives. So the first thing about challenging behavior, which you wouldn't think this would be the case, is actually our behavior. Not our child's behavior or student's behavior, it's our behavior. So let's talk about that first. This woman is very stressed. She's a mom of a differently wired child, and she has a lot of parenting stress. I actually did my undergraduate honors thesis on parenting stress. And it was interesting when I did the data and the research. And what I found was parents of differently wired children are literally, I'm not exaggerating, off the parenting stress charts because mostly challenging behavior. They are experiencing more stress, much more stress than parents of other kids. And again, I thought I knew all about parenting stress until I actually became a parent of differently wired children. And again, not at all the same. So we got to start with ourselves in order to help our child's behavior. So how lovely is this woman on the beach? I wish we could all be this stress-free. Not really as realistic, but it is important for us to be calm so we don't react, but we respond. Something I suggest when you have to keep yourself calm is a self-check. And this is something that I've had to learn the hard way to do. I check in with myself about every 30 minutes. How is my breathing? How is my anxiety level? How is my frustration? Being able to check in with myself, and whether that means setting it a vibrate on my phone, whatever that looks like, I highly suggest you consider it. To check in with yourself and realize what you're needing in that moment, if you need a break, really bringing in the mindfulness and understanding that it's okay to feel all the feelings that you're having, but we need to respond in ways that's supportive. So when I self-check, I ask myself, Holly, are you in a place to be supportive for your patients and your children? Or are you not? And if you're not, you need to calm yourself and use your strategies. So I highly recommend that. It's going to help set you up for success so you can better support the child that you're supporting. Also being compassionate. This is the other thing that really is essential to understand before you go in to address challenging behavior. These kids have it hard. It is hard. This world is just not set up for the way they learn and the way they process and the way they are in their environments. And so, of course, they would struggle. We have to have compassion for them and their own experience. And again, coming from a place of understanding and at how hard this must be for them. So it gives us a place to come at this situation as a support. This is also incredibly important. A child's behavior is not personal to you. It's very hurtful. Some of the things you might hear, some of the things you may experience, it feels incredibly personal, especially if they're calling you names and all kinds of other not so great things. I remember before I had my own children, I started in this journey of this profession. Sometimes I would think, why do these kids hate me so much? Like, what's going on? But really, it wasn't personal. It's what they're struggling with. And we're going to talk about that during this time together. Also, I would say, number one, we have to stay curious. We have to be curious about the challenging behavior. There is always a why. There is always a reason. And the beautiful thing about that is there's always ways to make it better. So we have to be open. We have to check ourselves. We have to be mindful and compassionate. And from those places, we can be the best supports. So tip 2 is we have to understand how their brain and body works. After we understand that, it makes so much more sense why they struggle. So when there are frontal cortex differences, and there are in this population, we're going to see impulsivity. So they're doing without thinking first. They're saying things without thinking first. They also struggle with self-motivation. They have real differences in their dopamine reward pathway, which means that we can't reward them in the same way we can reward other children. It's not going to be successful. They struggle with working memory. I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I experience this now that I'm in my mid to late 40s, but I don't remember where I put my keys. And then I walk into a room and don't remember what I'm putting there, or why I came in there. And this is how it is for them all the time, all the time. motor planning differences, problem solving deficits, emotional regulation. A lot of times these kids have really big feelings and it doesn't seem like it should be something they're so upset about. To us, maybe it's not a big deal. And we think that they're being dramatic or any of those things that we're really minimizing their experience. So their wiring really impacts their behavior. It really is a difference in neurology. It's not purposeful. They're coming from a different place. So we have to know that part. The amygdala, which is always fun to say. You see differences in this brain, in part of the brain as well. And so I'm sure you've heard of fight, freeze, and fight, and when we see kids shut down. And this is something we see a lot. When there are amygdala differences, we're going to see increased perceptions of sadness, defensiveness, fear, anxiety, anger. All of these things are more likely. Oftentimes they become very defensive. They're not open to hearing this correction that often happens for them most of the day. Sometimes we're going to see, again, enhanced memories of emotional events that bring up big feelings, problems recognizing facial expressions. That can be troublesome, especially for social differences that a lot of these kids have. And again, this makes motivation, this part of the brain makes motivational differences even more difficult. So their environment and how their body is reacting to this environment is overwhelming in some ways. And some children don't even have the communication to let you know what's happening for them. So just giving you an example, my oldest son is extremely sensitive to smell. If he is in an environment that is really uncomfortable with the smell, he will really struggle not to tell you, like, oh, this place smells so bad. I mean, something that we would consider as rude would be him reacting to his body being uncomfortable with this smell. I mean, for some kids, it's touch, it's sound. My nephew can't be in a gym during like a basketball game or something when a loud noise goes on. We'll actually have to leave the gym. So there are different ways that they're processing, whether they're processing something that seems this interaction is big with their environment and their body, or it's minimized and they feel like it's no big deal. And that could also be if they hurt themselves, they don't feel it, or if they hurt themselves, it's the worst thing that's ever happened in the world. So we always have to consider those sensory differences. Again, their brain and body requires a different approach. We can't expect the same reaction from them that we would for a typically wired child. Because if our expectations and the reality for them are not aligned, we're going to continue to have challenging behavior and problems between the parent, the teacher, and the child. Okay, so tip 3, this is so important to remember. If the problem behavior is occurring regularly, with regularity of any kind, it's being reinforced. People don't repeat behavior that doesn't work for them in some way. Again, this is something that we really have to just remain curious about. This is not a parenting deficit or teaching deficit. This is, we have to be curious. We have to be open to the reasons why behavior may continue to go the same way it is. We may have told our child to stop before. If they stop, they should know they're not allowed to do that, but then they repeat it, right? Or we feel like we've said, quit it 100 times and they still do it. Or tell them to listen a million times, it might feel like, and they're still not. So again, we have to approach it with curiosity and understanding when we're putting our scientist hats on and looking at their behavior. Also, when you're looking at challenging behavior, you have to be extremely specific. So for instance, yelling is not probably the best one to go with, just because what is yelling? When does it become yelling? Are we assessing volume in that moment? Do we have a device to do that? You know, it's not always an easy one. We can target it, but you definitely want to get somebody who specializes, like somebody more like me. I wouldn't do that on your own. But also thinking about specifics so the child knows exactly what it is. For instance, no hitting, no throwing things in the house, you know, very specific targets. So what we're going to do is break down the reasons behind challenging behavior. I had put together what I call my discovery table. And so I'm going to go through that with you really quick. Something we have to consider is date, time, location, and people. Remember, we're looking at this with compassion and curiosity and calm. This isn't personal. This is just human behavior. So this child is clearly upset. I love this picture. We have to think about date and times because it really is a beautiful way to discover why behavior is happening. So perhaps there is something going on around dates, something going around around times of the day. That can also be telling. Location, people in that location, people they're interacting with. We also have to know how often it's occurring and how long it's occurring. So for instance, say I am working on a particular disruptive behavior with one of my patients, I need to know how long and how often. That way I can assess that we're moving in the right direction, because we always wanted to be progressing constantly. If we're not, we're going to be changing something. So we know we have to know things are getting better by having a baseline. And again, these are important aspects to understand when we're figuring out the whys of challenging behavior. So now we're going to move on to this environmental and physiological factors, because again, that also impacts challenging behavior. So I don't know about you, but when I am hungry, I am not at my best. If I'm tired, same thing, anxious, depressed, perhaps there was a difference in medication. A lot of children that are differently wired require medication to be more successful. Not all, but some do. When a child is hungry, you know, they may not have the communication to let you know in a typical way. They might become more irritable, that type of thing. Perhaps you notice in the time of day that they are struggling or more irritable an hour or two before a scheduled meal. You know, perhaps that's one way that would lead us to decreasing challenging behaviors, providing a healthy snack or moving up the mealtime. If they're tired, which this population tends to have problems around sleep, we need to look at their sleep. How are they sleeping? When are they falling asleep? Are they staying asleep? All those kinds of things that we have to consider. Anxiety and depression are more likely to occur in differently wired children. We have got to pay attention to this part, because if we don't, we'll miss it. Oftentimes, anxiety is the root of challenging behavior. Depression can also be the root of challenging behavior. When we're discussing medication, we could be looking at rebound effects as far as stimulants. There's so many different things that we have to look at as far as behavior. And not only that, we have to report back to the prescriber to make sure they know how the medicine is working for the child. Another thing to consider are learning differences. So, you know, there are various studies, but what we see is around 70% of differently wired children with ADHD, children with autism spectrum disorder, they have learning disabilities. So we have to make sure that those are assessed, because it can explain so much of the challenging behavior. And it can also send us in the right direction to have the right strategies to best support them. There could also be too much or too little stimulation. Sometimes, depending on one of my patient's needs, I might need to require that the school provide some modifications in different environments, considering they're too much or too little of stimulation. There's also illness to consider. Sometimes with these populations, we see more problems with constipation and all kinds of differences in eating. So we have to make sure that we're checking all of the medical reasons behind challenging behavior as well. So I love this quote from Christopher McCurry. Capacity for flexibility can evaporate when the child's already stressed in some way, hungry, tired, and so on. So if we find that they're tired or overwhelmed by the environment, we can't expect them to take on one more stressor, whether that's asking them to follow an instruction or whatever that is, that demand goes beyond their capacity. So we want to make sure that we're looking at all these variables. There's no unimportant part when we're looking at challenging behavior, because if we can modify some of these, make it easier for the child, their capacity is so much more. Now we're going to look at what happened before the behavior occurs. So basically the triggers. Now this little guy is adorable. It's like one of my favorite kids to work with. So what we find is when we tell them to do something, we may not get the response that we want. Perhaps they're like, yes, thank you for asking me to do that for you, mom or dad. I'm going to run and take care of that for you. You know, it doesn't usually go that way. And it could be that they're not just trying to stress you out, but it could be that what you're asking is just too hard in that moment. Or maybe it's too easy, or maybe it's too long and it feels like it's going to take forever. We know it's not, but they feel like it is. And maybe it's too boring, or maybe we need to provide a better instruction. Again, we're looking at this with curiosity, and when we look at all the variables and take in the information, we can easily see the why behind the challenging behavior. Also, kids can have trouble with transitioning, going without attention for too long, and what might feel too long to them might just be a few minutes. Some children don't want this attention, and sometimes it's a mix. Some children feel like, oh, I don't want that attention right now, or I want this attention so much that I'm a sponge and I feel like I need to get it no matter what. I'll do whatever it takes to get it. Also, being told no, to wait, or stop can definitely be a trigger for some children. And also, children on the spectrum in particular tend to have a plan in their heads of the way they think things should go. So this stuck idea where I have this plan and it has to happen. Or maybe they have a plan and they haven't shared it with anyone, but they get upset and they're melting down and they're not telling you why because they don't have the communication to do so. Or I have a plan, I'm going to play video games for this long, and then I'm going to do this. And then you come in as a parent and wreck their whole plan because you tell them something else is happening. So these types of things can be triggers for them because they don't switch or transition very well. And again, they have these very stuck, definite plans. So this is just an example of something that can happen. So say somebody is differently wired, and they maybe need more movement than their other peers, but then they're told to sit, right? This is an example from school. And then they're told to write, but they actually have a written expression disorder and some fine motor skill deficits, and behavior happens. And it feels like it comes out of nowhere sometimes, but as you can clearly see, it's not coming out of nowhere at all. We can see exactly what's happening. And here's another example. And again, this is kind of a school example. The child is tired. There were too many instructions in a row. A peer teased them. Of course, no one saw because kids can be sly. They got a poor grade on a test. Then they lost a game, and then they went off and hit somebody, or cleared a desk, or something like that, or got up and left the class without permission. So again, it looks like it's defiance, they're being oppositional, but really it's this stacking effect of this is too much, it's too hard, and I'm doing the best I can in this moment. I can't do anything more. So let's talk about the consequences, which is also a very important part of all this. Children who are differently wired tend to be corrected or reprimanded much, much more than neurotypical peers, because they're coming up against all these stop signs. That's wrong, stop this, do that, do this differently, and they can be overwhelmed and it's just too much. And that could lead to a meltdown as well. Provided help. Sometimes they don't want that. They want to do it themselves. They don't want to see other people know that they don't want other people to know they need help. They don't want help. They don't like the way you helped. Maybe peers laughed at them. And that was embarrassing. And then being told no, wait, or stop. That can also help come not only before the behavior, but also after, of course. And sometimes ignoring is another consequence that people sometimes use. This is one that typically comes up, is escape avoidance of difficult tasks, non-preferred tasks, locations. It's just getting away or avoiding something that they don't want. And not just to be difficult, but because it's hard for them and they don't know another way. All they know is flight. I got to get out of here, or I'm going to shut down to avoid this. I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to do all these things that can be pretty effective in order to escape or avoid. Another consequence is they got something that they wanted, an activity they wanted. Sometimes parents get to just the edge. I have been there. I am a behavior expert, but I am first and foremost a human. And so there have been a few times where I've checked in with myself and thought, okay, Holly, I'm just going to let this be. You do you, and mom's going to take a break here for a second. Okay, so sometimes it's just like, keep playing that for 5 more minutes. I'll be right back. Sometimes children want to be alone, and then they get to be alone. Timeout is short for timeout for reinforcement. Timeout can be used really effectively sometimes with children, and it's not so efficient or effective when the child just wants to be alone. So they may act out so they can be alone. Getting internal stimulation is also sometimes a consequence of challenging behavior. So I'm going to ask you to put your phone aside. I don't want anything to distract you at this moment. And I want you to come with me on this story. I want you to imagine that you're in a skyscraper and you are on the 83rd floor. And it's just glass walls from floor to ceiling. You're standing at the very edge of that glass, and you look down and you're 83 and you barely can see the bottom. You're up so high. And there's a rope, and it's securely tied by where your feet are to 100 yards away at the skyscraper next door. And it rained recently, just like it is in North Carolina right now. It rained and the rope is wet. And I'm going to blindfold you. And now I'm going to tell you to walk across because I told you to. And I would imagine that most of you would say, oh, heck no, I'm not going to do that. That's way too hard. That's way too scary. I'm going to fall. I'm going to get hurt. I'm not going to do that. But then I'm going to say, okay, well, I'll offer you a sticker if you do it. You probably still won't do it. Now, if I say, I'll offer you $1 or something, I'm going to give you something. I'm going to let you play Fortnite. And you still refuse to do it. I would imagine the feeling that I would have standing there would be, this is impossible. I am full of anxiety. I'm going to fail. I'm going to fall. And I wouldn't do it. No matter what you offered me, I wouldn't do it. So I want you to think about that as we go further into understanding challenging behavior. If I was to stand behind you and say, I told you to go, I'm sick of you not listening, you need to go now, I'm tired of repeating myself, and then you were labeled as oppositional because you didn't listen. You didn't listen to me. You are purposely refusing to do what I said. You know, oftentimes we have the best intentions because we're human, right? We are built to instruct our children. We want to tell them what to do because we want to help have them be the most successful people they can be. We want to teach them things. We had this idea when we had kids that somehow they were just going to listen to us. But these kids are different. They're built different. And so they definitely need a different approach. Oftentimes they feel like they're constantly been told they're oppositional or they're refusing. They feel like what we ask them to do is impossible and they just can't win. And oftentimes that leads to challenging behavior. So through this time this evening that we have together, I'm going to talk to you about making the impossible possible. If we expect them to do something and they don't do it, it's because we're not matching up with where they are now and our expectations. We have to move ourselves and our expectations and our supports in order for them to feel like what we're asking is possible. We've got to start there. And it's a very different way of thinking of it. Let's talk about this mom who is telling their child that he needs to do a worksheet, right? This is his homework. He's saying, I can't do it. It's impossible. It'll take forever. Or maybe he's not even saying that. He's just shutting down. Or maybe he's running from the kitchen table. I don't know. But this poor mom, she just wants him to do the worksheet because not only is that his assignment, but she feels an obligation to his teacher as well. So she needs him to do it. It looks very oppositional. It looks disrespectful, his behavior. And, upsetting to the mom, of course. So now we're going to try and look at it in a different way and make the possible, or impossible, I should say, possible. We went from, I can't do it, it'll take forever, which was impossible. And now we're going to do half the worksheet right now. And then we're going to have a break. And then he's going to get rewards. And then it's going to be electronics time after that. And the mom's going to show him the first one. She's going to help on the front end instead of getting frustrated on the back end. There are so many different things that we can do that can change everything for them. It's incredible. It's so exciting. So this is an example of the discovery table that's actually filled out. And this will show you how we're going to move across this table and consider what do we do? What do we do about this? What are the strategies that we can use? And again, there's many, many examples that we can choose from. This one in particular is from school. So it's 11 a.m. This little guy, Jack, he had a challenging behavior. This was running from class. This is the behavior that we're targeting. So it's specific. And this happened for 2 minutes. So he was hungry. He was hungry. It's before lunch. It was a loud environment. He had been sitting for a while. So these are all things that could have led up to this challenging behavior. He was asked to do a writing assignment. And we're guessing it was too hard and too long for him. And then no one was paying attention to him either. The teacher was very busy. a big classroom, it was hard for he or she to do that. So he not only was running from the class, he threw his pencil before that. So that's a behavior that came along with this. So what happened afterwards is the teacher raised her voice because she was frustrated. Of course she would be, anybody would. The child was talked to by her to improve their behavior. So there we could see that that would be a component as well of possibly maintaining this behavior. The child got something he wanted, which was a book and or attention, if attention seeking was a part of what was maintaining this behavior. And the child was able to avoid writing. So that's something to think about too. So what we want to do, again, is take that information and look at it and how do we move forward. So we could negotiate a little bit. He could run at different times that were more appropriate. All of these things could be done. It could be better and better and better. Okay, so then we're going to come back to this example. Sorry, it went ahead of me for a second. So sorry, everybody. So we're going to get an OT evaluation to see if there are any fine motor difficulties, probably get a psychological, see if there's a written expression disorder. We're going to make it so he can get more attention from the teacher on the front end instead of the back end, to where it's not just mostly after challenging behavior. He's going to be able to access more appropriate ways to follow the rules. He's going to have check-ins for rewards. And he's going to be able to ask to read his book and get the book after he does a little bit of work. So this is kind of a way that we're going to go ahead of time. And then I got ahead of myself. So we're going to go into this example. So here is a little person, and this yelling and sitting down really was the behavior of sitting out of class. But they were raising their voice at the time as well. So I went ahead and put that in place just to be able to distinguish between the two. It lasted about 10 minutes. It was in PE class, and they were supposed to be running. Happened around 2 p.m. So chances are the stimulant was actually getting out of their system, and the environment was loud, and this child was likely anxious at the time as well. So the activity that she was asked to do was to run laps, and it was too boring, too long, and too hard. And she asked to draw instead, and she was told no, because that's not what they were doing at that time. It was interesting, her thought about this, because she wasn't able to communicate exactly why she was struggling with this, this problem, why she was struggling with this activity she was asked to do. And it ended up being a stuck idea, or this idea she had in her head that she had this small amount of energy that she could not waste. So if she wasted energy doing laps, then what was she going to do? She wasn't going to have enough energy for the other things. And then that's where anxiety came in as well. So she was avoiding and escaping running. She was talked to about behaving better. And her PE teacher had raised his voice at her. So what we wanted to do is, again, is look at kind of negotiation, compromise. This isn't her getting away with anything. This is her getting what she needs. If she had to get some physical exercise, because that's important too, she had compromised and agreed on running half and then drawing half right afterwards. So let's talk about some strategies that we can use moving forward. And visual prevention strategies, I'm a big fan of, because it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. They can be very efficient and very effective. We want to show time. I am a big fan of the Time Timer Plus. Those of you who know of it, I even have one behind me on my desk. I actually have 3 in my private practice, and I have 2 at home for my boys. So again, like I said, I'm a big fan of this one. You can set the time, and you can see the red, and then the red ticks away, and they show that time is disappearing, which is really cool. Lots of kids that are differently wired struggle with understanding time. So you may often hear from them, this is going to be forever and I'm never going to get what I want. And I'll die before I get to play video games again. It's all very big for them. And we can see that they all struggle with this. For almost every child, I've worked with hundreds of children and they struggle with time. They may know how to tell time, but they don't really understand time. And that's really, I like the visual timer because they can see that they won't have to wait forever to get what they want, or let them see that it won't be forever as well. So if you've got, hey, I can pay attention to you in 5 minutes. Mom's just got to finish this part and I'm going to set the timer and show you when it's time. You can come back and we're going to play that together. And so they can see the time instead of falling apart. The anxiety can go down. They know that what they're going to get and when they're going to get it, which is very exciting. And again, showing them a schedule is really important too. And this has a lot to do with understanding time. Modeling first, you're setting them up for success. If you're asking them to do something, show them first. Don't even expect them to do it by themselves first. All because they did it once doesn't mean that they know exactly what to do the next time. So modeling first is always a good thing. Breaking down steps is incredibly important because if we say, go do this, it can be incredibly overwhelming. And I'll give you a common example is go clean your room. If you were to break down the steps of cleaning a room, you could easily be 50 to 100 steps, easy, if you went down each single tiny step. So no wonder they get so overwhelmed. So you just want to break things down. You can check off or erase what's done. This is great for homework too. And then also show them a reward is coming. So this is my youngest son's dry erase board before he goes to school. And these are some small magnets on the side. So he has to get dressed, puts the magnet on, eat breakfast, put the magnet on, brush teeth, put the magnet on, earn 5 minutes of iPad time before leaving for school. Not all kids can do the magnet. He couldn't at first. So we did some checks. I'm the one who put the magnet on at first because he would say I brushed my teeth, and he'd stick it on there. No, you didn't, you're busted. So you had to go back and change that part. But if you're flexible and you can figure all of this stuff, it's all figure outable. And again, I talked about the Time Timer Plus, and I just want to touch on it about how many other things you can use it for. It's countless, but I'm going to talk about a few. Show breaks. So say you would like them to read for a short amount of time and you show them, you're going to get a break in 5 minutes, or you're going to break in 10 minutes. I mean, it all depends on where they are in that moment and what they need. You can also show them that next transition. You can practice scheduled relaxation, which is lovely. Bathroom reminders. Sometimes kids are so busy that they forget to go to the bathroom. So that could be helpful for that. Turn taking is always great. And I love the time timer for turn taking. It shows them that it will be their turn again. And it also shows them when their turn will be over, because sometimes they'll keep going if they don't have this idea of time. Also, you can increase the duration of participation. Say you want them to go outside and get some physical activity. Maybe that's shooting some baskets. Maybe they can only do it for 3 or 4 minutes before they're like, I can't do it anymore. Set it for 3 minutes and say, that's awesome. And then maybe next week you set it for 5 minutes. And so it's a lovely way to kind of keep track and show them that they can keep doing more as well. Another great strategy is effective instructions. And this does not come naturally. I talked to John Wilson about this in the last podcast I do. I have a podcast called Wired Differently. It's beautiful. I hope you come and check it out. I was giving him an example of how I screwed this up too the other day with my own son. He had some trash on his floor, and I said, please pick up the trash, please pick up the trash and put it in the trash can. And, I was kind of getting on to him about that, but if I would have gone in there and I'd say, clean up your room, he would have fallen apart. I can't do it. It's too much. I can't do it. You know, and really, really would end up in a bunch of challenging behavior. So going in and saying, clean, instead of saying clean your room, it's please pick up this trash and put it in the garbage can. That's all I'm going to ask him to do. That's all I know he can keep in mind while I'm there providing that instruction. So I also want to use a positive tone instead of, I'm sick of telling you to do this, because believe me, I think that in my head, but I don't say it out loud sometimes. Well, I don't say it out loud, but I do think about it in my head because I'm human. Is please put your pillow, take your pillow off the floor and put it on your bed. I mean, something very specific. I once worked with someone who was telling me their child wasn't listening and they were really frustrated. And I said, please give me an example. And they said, well, we tell him to take his shoes upstairs. And I said, okay, so what happened? They said, well, tell her to go take the shoes and put it upstairs in her closet in her bedroom. So I said, what exact words do you use? Take your shoes upstairs. And I said, well, what happened? She actually put them at the top of the stairs. I'm like, well, she did what you asked, right? That's specifically what you asked. Like, no, we wanted her to put them in her bedroom closet, but that's not what they were asking her to do. So it's very, very important that we say specifically what we want them to do. And sometimes it can get overwhelming for us as parents or teachers, but it's much better to do it this way than end up in a fight, an argument, and damaging our relationship with our child or our student. So what we want them to do is also be as positive as we can be for them. Tell them what to do instead of what to not do. So oftentimes, again, as humans, if our child is doing something we don't want them to do, we just tell them to stop. Stop, quit it, enough. So for example, if your child is jumping on the couch, instead of saying, stop jumping on the couch, you would say, point to the floor next to you and say, please stand here. So you want to do something that's the opposite. Tell them to do the opposite of what they're doing, because you're telling them what to do instead of what not to do. And that gives you an opportunity to praise as well. So again, for effective instructions, oftentimes we like to use lots of words and we like to provide explanations for our instructions to our children or our students. So because of the way their brain works, it's important that we're careful how we do this. So you only want to give an explanation of why you want them to do something either before the instruction or after they complied with the instruction. What we tend to do is tell our children to do something and then start chatting away, and then they get distracted or they get overwhelmed and they forget what they were trying to hold in mind by the words that we're saying. So we want to be really careful about that. And I'll give you an example of that. If you say, please put your shoes on, and then you immediately say, because we got to go, we're late, we got to run to the store, and they still haven't put their shoes on yet, they might be less successful that way. But if you say, please put your shoes on, they put their shoes on, and then you say, oh, thank you for putting your shoes on, we're going to be able to get to the store even faster, which is very different. And again, use visuals whenever possible. Please start with the word please for the instructions you give. It's actually going to set you up for success. So if you say, please put, please do, that's going to help you be more specific, less likely to do a lot of steps. And you want to stay away from words like can you, will you, or let's, because that also leads to confusion. So please start with please. I think that you will be much happier with that. Also, increasing success by reducing the amount of work. Now, that does not mean that your child is not smart or your student is not smart. It just means that you always have to do 20 math problems in order to understand the concept. Maybe you only have to do 10. Provide choices of work, of what they want to do, the sequence. What do you want to do first? Sometimes I'll lay out subjects for homework and I'll say, you put them in the order that you want to do them, whatever you want. Providing choices can bring down anxiety and can also increase compliance. You also want to adjust work around 80 to 20, so then they feel more successful. If you provide a lot of hard work at once and they feel like they fail, corrected, they're not going to want to do it. I definitely would not want to do something where I was constantly corrected and constantly failed. I wouldn't have the motivation to do that. And I am typically wired. So we want to make sure that we are loading them up with lots of praise opportunities, lots of success opportunities, and then adding in the more difficult requests or activities. So showing less work at a time. Sometimes a simple thing we can do is just cover up different parts of worksheets or different parts of work. And that can make it much more doable. Another thing we could say is only do this and then take a break. Only do this. That, again, can decrease their anxiety and set them up for success. Another way, again, we can do is model and prompt versus test. That's another great way to help them succeed in school. Take a break, try it again. You don't have to keep doing it and keep failing. We can do it again. Take a break. I'll come back and help you. I'll do the first one for you if you want to. It's about keeping them engaged and making it possible. Also, test misspelling words, orally. We do this for my younger son, where with his learning disabilities, he can actually spell orally much better than he can write. And so writing that grade isn't really an indication of his knowledge. So when I definitely put in lots of strategies for him. And again, visual modeling for math problems is another good one for them as well. Starting out with, what part do you need help with? This is something I use with my patients at school, something I use for parents that I work with their children at home, and also my own. What part do you need help with? Instead of, this is overwhelming, I can't do it. What part do you need help with? There's something very calming and beautiful and supportive about that. Another thing I often find helpful is fill-ins. And this is, I'm upset because. A lot of times differently wired children struggle with communication. They may have words, they may have lots of words, but it's hard for them to communicate when they are dysregulated. So something you can think about again is, I'm upset because, then they fill in the rest. I'm really sad because, then they fill in the rest. This is really opening up the door for them to communicate. Sometimes they can't start the sentence very well, but we can help them with that. Movement breaks are important, sandwiching fun activities with more difficult ones. And again, this kind of goes with the 80-20, is I'm going to set you up for success before I'm going to give you something more challenging. Because remember, their wiring, they're more likely to be corrected. They're more likely to feel defensive. They're more likely to shut down than other kids. So we really have to be thoughtful and mindful about our approach. I mentioned correction earlier, and sometimes you don't have to say, if somebody is incredibly sensitive to correction, take it out as much as you can. Don't say the answer is right or wrong. Just see the areas they need help in and do that. So say, for instance, you're a teacher, you provide a test, you see what's right or wrong, and for the right ones, you do your 80, for the wrong ones, you do your 20, and then you help and strategize the more with the wrong ones. And again, easing into correction and rewards for accepting correction. And what if they don't want help? That's something that comes up quite a bit, because again, there's embarrassment, there is frustration, there's defensiveness. So again, they have to be motivated, extrinsically motivated. Also think about, access to their interests for accepting help. Are they open to collaborating? For instance, would you like me to show you or tell you? Would you like to tell me, or would you like to write it? There is no way you have to do it. How we have to do it is the way that it works for the child. And again, I talked about this too. Rewards for accepting no. Hearing no is not easy. Rewards for waiting. taking a break instead of getting mad, participating longer, asking for help. These are all things that are really hard for them. So it's important that we set them up for success by rewarding those behaviors we want to see more of. And again, turn taking, being able to stay calm, ignoring the challenging behaviors of others. Oftentimes, children that are differently wired are very distracted by the behavior of their peers or others. So we have to work on that too. And also these pro-social behaviors that we want to reward them for helping someone else. And use interest as much as possible. I'm sure a lot of you will be like, yes, that's a creeper. We know exactly what it is from Minecraft, or maybe there's Fortnite, whatever that looks like. Dinosaurs, use their interests to motivate them, to help them progress. I developed something that I call the progress puzzle. And this is what I did. When you see this dinosaur picture, all you have to do is take a special interest of the child, maybe go to Google Images, have them pick which image they like best, or maybe even a couple of them, and then cut them out according to the progress that they're making. So for instance, if you want your child to do, 2 chores and there are various parts of those chores, when they're done with that one step or a few steps, give them that puzzle piece. And by the time they're done, because you don't want it to be too hard that they feel like it's impossible, but they see their progress. The puzzle pieces are coming together, and as soon as those pieces are together, they get that reward or they get to engage in the related activity, that puzzle image. So it's something to think about. We have to be really creative when it comes to using interest as a motivator for these kids. So one of the last things I want to leave you with today is beware of the should and the refuse. This is something, and again, I'm always raw and real and honest with my audience, and I struggle with this. Even though I know the reasons why challenging behavior occurs, I get it. The human brain, it will tell you the shoulds, and sometimes that looks like, oh, he's 10 years old, he should know how to do this. Or, they're refusing to listen. Be kind to yourself when the shoulds and the refuses come up for you, because they will. They will, because you're human. And recognize those as just an opportunity for curiosity. And when this just came up for me not too long ago, last week, where I thought of my 10-year-old, like, oh, he's refusing to do what I said. I said that in my head. And then, of course, the light bulb goes on, like I always try to help myself with, and my patients and their parents and their teachers, is that was a clue for me to step back and get curious, to get calm and to get compassionate, and understand that he was doing the best he could in that moment. What did I need to do? I needed to change my expectation. I needed to make the impossible possible in order to support him. He wasn't trying to be difficult. He was doing the best that he could. And so again, it's always important to think the child isn't trying to give you a hard time, even though it may very much feel like that sometimes. They are actually having a hard time and they need your help. This is a very different lens to look at challenging behavior. There is a why. And there are ways to be more supportive. There's a way to set up their environment to support them in a better way. And again, they are doing the best they can with what they have at that time. And that's why we have to step in to help them. And it's not personal, even though it can very much feel that way. And they are really struggling. So when you look at challenging behavior in the way that this isn't them trying to upset me, it's they are truly struggling. This child I care so much for is struggling, and I need to figure out how to support them and help them be more successful. So again, calm and curious and compassionate. And when we come from a place of those 3 things, behavior can look very, very different. So I know Liz is going to pop on here soon, and I'm going to see if you have any questions. I would love if you would come and visit me over at hollyblancmoses.com. You can get a free detective guide, a free social skills guide. You'll see some other helpful information from me as well. And if you're a professional, I have goodies there for you too.
Thank you, Holly. That was absolutely fabulous. It was really great. And I'm so glad to hear you say that we can get those resources from your website. So that was going to be my question was, where can parents sort of access that discovery tool? I really like that as well. I'm an old special ed teacher, and so I've used a lot of those tools in the past, and they really are helpful. And they really do take that personal piece out of it. You become a detective. And so that was really, really super.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm excited to talk about it.
Well, you have a lot of great ideas and great strategies for the parents. So far, I think it's just been a great learning experience, and probably everybody's just digesting. We don't quite have any questions yet, but knowing how they can get in touch with you if they need to. And that's in the chat bar, folks, as well. It's right on the screen, and I put it in the chat bar as well. So, and you all know that if you can't get in touch with Holly or you lose it, please contact me, Liz, at soarnc.org, and I will refer your email to Holly so she can see that. So I guess it's late on the East Coast now, starting to settle down here in Wyoming as well. So I'm just going to let us go because we went the whole hour, and we want to be appreciative of people's time. Holly, again, cannot thank you enough. We're going to post this on our website at soarnc.org/webinars/. So for people who didn't get to see it today, or who would like to revisit it or share it with a friend or another parent that you know, or even your child's teacher, which would really be great, you'll be able to do that once we get it posted.
Yes, and thank you so much again for joining me tonight. I know all of you are incredibly busy, and that just shows how much you care is to take that time out to learn more about behavior. And I definitely want to invite you not only to my website, but I do have a Facebook group for parents of differently wired children. A very active, loving, supportive group, and it is called Wired Differently. So is what it's called for parents. And I also have one for professionals as well. But we have over 6,000 parents across the world, but primarily from North Carolina. So if you are on Facebook and you're looking for support and great information, that's also a wonderful resource for you.
Beautiful. That's really beautiful. So Wired Differently. Just got to remember, Wired Differently.
Yeah, and you see my face on the top there, so you can't miss it.
That's pretty easy. Okay. Well, Holly, thank you again, and we will post this. And really, it was just excellent information. Really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Liz, and everybody.
All righty. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.